So let's see what we can do with that. All right. Um, Again, welcome everyone this morning to the second part of our farm safety training Zoom meetings that we are having. Again, agents in your work, just to remind you that if you have farmers that are in need of some kind of assistance due to physical limitation, whatever that might be, plus it also could be with the age of farming population increasing, knee, joint, back, arthritis, all those things, to reach out to Joetta and or Eileen in your area for those helps with some of those farmers that you may have. But we're switching our focus a little bit today to back to farm safety that we did just a couple of months ago. And if there's a way for us to help and prevent secondary injuries, then that's what we want to do, what we are all about. The last time that we met, we talked about agricultural injuries. We gave a lot of statistics and that kind of thing. We're not going to go over that this morning. And I know you know as well that agriculture and the farming industry is one of the most dangerous injuries that are out there. So we want to encourage safeness on the farm. So we have this set of Zoom meetings and trainings that we're doing will certainly be helpful to you and to others as your producers as you talk to them about this as well. So we have an opportunity to do a few things in farm safety, kind of separate from the agribility project that we have been involved with for quite a while. This morning, we're glad to have with us Dr. Brian Hoover. He is the professor in the Department of Agricultural Science at Murray State University. Dr. Hoover received his bachelor and master's degree from Murray State in 2001 and 2002, and his PhD from Purdue in 2010. While he was at Purdue, he focused on youth safety in agriculture for his research. He's also taught full time at Murray State since 2008 in a variety of things: precision ag, agricultural safety programs, engines, tractors, equipment, hydraulics, agricultural buildings. In addition to his teaching there, he is also currently serving as program coordinator for the Ag System Technology Program that includes in that precision ag and unmanned aerial systems. He's also involved at Murray with student organizations, served as an advisor for the Wesley Foundation campus ministry for the last 8 years, and has helped students form antique tractor and equipment clubs. So we look forward to his presentation this morning. Dr. Hoover, thank you for being here, giving us of your time today. If you have questions, if you'll hold those to the end or put those in the chat, we'll monitor those, or any discussions. We'll do those kinds of things at the end. So, Dr. Hoover, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And as we did earlier, I think you'll be able to share your screen at this time and we'll get your part underway.
Well, good morning. Everybody hear me and see everything okay? Things working?
Yes, sir. I think we're good.
All right, good deal. Good deal. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak to your group this morning. I told some of them right before we were starting, my motto is there's nothing special about me, but if I've got something that helps somebody else along the way, I'm more than happy to share that and go through that. And really hope that's what this is this morning for you, is learning something, but also having a really good resource if you need that as well. So ag safety is something that I find myself in now that was not intentional. I did not go to school, college, advanced degrees, really to seek out and work in agriculture safety. It's kind of something that almost kind of happened by accident, I guess. Wasn't really intentional, but here I am. And both of my advanced degrees, my master's and doctorate, both focus on ag safety. So I guess I'm a specialist in the area, whether I really realize that or not. Um, but it's something that a lot of time gets overlooked in workplace settings on the farm and kind of in the agriculture industry in general. We don't think too much about it until somebody actually gets hurt, and that's really, that's too late at that point to do a whole lot about it. So hopefully, with some educational efforts along the way, like this one this morning, we can get the word spread, and you guys can have a better understanding and be able to pass that along to your respective groups. So I really hope that's what you're able to do with this morning. Um, so this slide here, there's a lot of names on the slide, a lot of organizations, and so I think that's great because the reach, the impact of a bunch of different groups coming together is always a good thing, especially when we talk about safety and saving somebody's life potentially. So I'm glad to have the connection to all the different groups there. To kind of get started with this morning, I want to give you just some real brief overview background kind of statistics, and Troy's already mentioned one of these this morning, but just kind of a baseline of why do we do what we do? What's the reason? And so agriculture is known for a lot of things, and unfortunately the fatality and injury numbers are one of the things we're known for. Not something that we're very proud of, and need to try and work against, having that. But consistently, agriculture, mining, and construction are in the top three most hazardous industries as a whole in our country every single year. It's very consistent. Which one is the most hazardous depends on the year that that industry has. I remember when I was in grad school at Purdue, it would have been about 2007 or 6 or 7, somewhere in there. There was a really bad mining accident in, I think it was Pennsylvania that year, and a lot of mine workers were trapped in an underground mine and perished. For whatever, I don't remember all the details of the accident, but that particular year, that one, and I think another one or two, that put mining at number one that particular year. So it kind of depends on the year that the industries have as the actual rankings that they work out to be. But again, that's not something we're real proud of. So having some educational efforts, having some community connection, having some programming, which I know you guys do all that. Um, that's really what the biggest help is going to be to get the word out there. One of the struggles within the ag industry is there's nobody to really show up to a farm and say, hey, you might want to think about doing this a little bit different, or maybe fixing this thing that looks pretty hazardous. OSHA, or there's no other organization that can do that. So the evaluation and the safety program, the safety trainings, and the whole thing is left up to individual farms. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times it just gets overlooked, unfortunately. So if we've got some folks like you all that can kind of fill the gaps and get the word out there, be a resource for the community, then hopefully we've got something that's a good thing there. Um, so agriculture is dangerous in a lot of different ways. We'll look at some of the specific things a little bit later with PTO safety, but just kind of in general, connection we have to the country in general, to all industries, is that slips and falls are extremely common. I teach an ag safety class. I teach two ag safety classes every semester here at Murray State, and I've started getting a lot of OSH students in my classes. They're taking my ag safety class as an elective in their program, and so I ask them. I say, show this slide and say, in agriculture, this is the number one non-fatal injury. What is it in other industries? And they said it's the same thing. So we a lot of times get kind of some tunnel vision maybe, or we feel isolated because our workplaces are isolated a lot of times in agriculture, and we don't have the connection or the view that we actually have. We're kind of isolated on our individual farms, but we really have a connection to all other industries in a lot of different ways, and this is definitely one of those. So we've got we're unique in our location, we're unique in the work, but as far as the hazards and the dangers and the reasons that we have incidents and accidents and fatalities, kind of are all about the same. There's situational differences, but the reasons behind that, the underlying reasons behind that, are very similar, if not the same. And we'll talk about some of those this morning as well. So one of the things I wanted to share with you, this is kind of my plug for this curriculum here. I'll take a few minutes and tell you about this before we go on. But the Gearing Up for Safety curriculum has been in development since I think the mid 1990s is when this started. So if you're looking for resources, this to me is one of the um, better ones that's out there. Now, I say that I've got a connection with this because when in grad school at Purdue, working on my PhD, I did some early work on the testing portion of this curriculum. So I have a connection to that. At the time, it was good, and I won't say it was bad at all, but there wasn't that many pieces to it. But since I left 20 and graduating in 2010, they've continued to work on this. So this curriculum is actually a pretty large curriculum with lots of more resources probably than you all can use in any of your programs. There's just a lot there. So I want to give you a quick tour of this. So the way you get to this is housed at Purdue University on a Purdue University website. So the link is there on the slide, and Troy asked if I'd share the PowerPoint with you all as well, and that's fine. If you want to follow the link, it's there. Click it, and you're ready to go. But you can also just do a quick Google search and just put in the search bar "Gearing Up for Safety," and it should be the first link that pops up. So I want to do a switch here over to the website here. Can everybody see the website now?
We still see your PowerPoint.
Still
Yeah.
see the PowerPoint. Okay. Let me
We
see.
see the six. We see the six PowerPoints on the display.
Right. Let me see.
Six
Here,
slides.
we switched around here. How about now?
There you
Yes.
go.
Okay, good deal. All right, so you click the link, you go to the Google search, and go there. Then this is what's going to show up for you. So what I'm going to do, and obviously there's a lot of links, there's a lot of things here. What I'm going to do is go through the curriculum from an instructor perspective, a community program perspective, like what you all would be familiar with doing. This is probably some of the things that you would be most beneficial from here. So going to the lessons and just kind of give you an idea, all lessons here. And it says certification there. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But all of these lessons are here. So the one that I'm going through that I base my presentation today out of is lesson number 5. Um, but you can see there's a pretty big variety of things there. There are some supplemental lessons that were developed a little bit later on. Quite a few of them there. Trailer and towing safety, one kind of stands out. But there's a lot of things there. So um, for example, lesson 5, again, which I'm basing my presentation out of today, you click on the lesson. Every lesson has this many links. Okay. So the PowerPoint it brings up the PowerPoint file. Every PowerPoint has several slides there. There's notes on the PowerPoint. So if you're maybe not as familiar with something you're presenting on, there'll be notes in the notes box under the slides. So it's not necessarily a script, but you've got that resource that's there. Slide notes are there. The self-study videos were added. They got some emergency funding from COVID. I don't know if you guys did anything with that, had any benefit from that. But they were able to write a grant and get some emergency funding for that. So each of these lessons, if because it was marketed kind of under learning by distance, when you couldn't be close to anybody, you couldn't go to a class, that you could go in and watch these videos. It's a 2-part video. Each part is about 20 minutes. So you're looking at approximately 40 minutes plus or minus a few minutes, depending on the lesson for each one of these. I did one of them. They had several other folks from across the country and the safety network that they're in to do those. So if necessary and needed, you've got some videos as resources there as well. The activity sheets are here and kind of self-explanatory. I will say um, one of my jobs as a lowly bottom of the, not even on the totem pole grad student, was to work these youth activity sheets and make sure the key was right. So I was able to hone my skills on simple crossword puzzles while I was there. So, but anyway, the activity sheets, some of them have teaching aids. If you have a need for, if you're an instructor, have a need for a quiz, there's the quiz, the answers are right there. Um, Competencies, kind of a big deal nowadays to have curriculum that meets some educational standards. So those are included there as well. And then some example case studies. If you need to have situations to kind of talk through with a group, there's examples of those. So, like I said, every lesson has that much stuff. And so that's a lot of information and it's easy to get lost in all that. So if you want to use this, I would encourage you just to kind of browse what's there. With the different topics, I think it's broken down probably pretty well between all those. You can kind of find your way through the topic area that you're looking at. And then if there's any, y'all have any questions or whatever, you can contact the Purdue group for like the most current stuff, but I'll be glad to try and help you walk through anything that I can along the way. Um, so this curriculum was originally put together for something besides what I'm using it for, and probably not what you would use it for either. But it has turned into something different than initially designed, which I think is great. This certification piece, if you're connected with safety, you may have an idea about this, but there's federal laws that regulate youth employment. And so, we don't see an 8-year-old flipping burgers at McDonald's, for example. There's laws that are related to in having employment standards and everything. So those employment standards and laws and regulations and rules apply to agriculture as well. There's some um, loopholes, I guess you could say. There's some provisions in there to protect family farms and the youth working on a family farm. But just from a straight employment perspective, the rules and laws, like a lot of, all of the industries, apply to agriculture as well. So this curriculum was set up originally, and the original funding was to develop a curriculum that youth could be trained with if they were going to work in an agricultural setting. With the statistics that we see, it's dangerous work, it's dangerous locations, it's an issue. So the funding came about at in an appropriate time with appropriate folks applying for that. And so originally this curriculum was set up to meet that specific need. And it's still there. That's what you want to go through this and have the evaluation piece. There's a testing procedure that if you're seeking that certification as a 14-year-old kid, you can go through the testing procedure with a written exam, a pre-operational exam, and then a driving tractor operational exam, and get certified in that and be able to actually be employed with that. So this is an interesting area. I usually get very few hands when I ask this question, but a lot of people, especially in the farming community, unless there's been an issue, a lot of people don't know anything about youth employment regulations in agriculture. And I ask, in my class, I say, how many of you have worked for a neighbor when you were a kid? Did you help the neighboring farm in some kind of way? And a lot of times, farming communities are pretty small, so that help has happened. I mean, I remember not really being able to press the clutch pedal on a really small John Deere tractor when I was about 4 years old, probably. But I was driving it for my uncle, for the neighbor, picking up hay, and I got paid $1 for helping him. Not that, I was any great employee or nothing at 4 years old, but I remember doing that. And a lot of people have that story, have that experience, but by the law, that's illegal. And so that's a tough situation to navigate because in the agricultural community, that sense of helping each other out is a pretty big deal. It still happens a lot nowadays, farmers helping other farmers. So it's kind of a difficult thing to think about, but if there is ever an issue with a fatality or an injury, then there's fines and there's typical stuff, fines and lawsuits and problems to have to work through. So this this curriculum was originally built with that in mind. So the youth that would be employed in agriculture could be certified, and then legally everything would all be kosher. So it's everything would be good to go. So that's what this piece here is with the evaluation. And again, that's what all of this was originally developed for, was youth testing and youth certification. Now, having said that, there's a lot of benefit um, from just using the material. When it was originally set up, it was again for youth, but it was also set up for low literacy situations. So if someone couldn't really read or write, that you do a presentation to help somebody out. It's pretty low especially something like this. It's pretty low content of the wording and everything. A lot of visuals there. Through the years, as you all know as well as I do, there's been a lot of migrant labor, primarily Hispanic, but other nationalities as well, that English may not be a strong ability for them to be able to use. So again, low literacy, you don't have to have a lot of words to convey the safety message and what you're trying to do. So from I guess all of those accounts, even just a simple training for a new employee, it works for that. So even though this is marketed, and you'll see the terminology and things if you browse the Gearing Up materials, that it's a lot of youth safety, youth employment, youth focused, but it's a lot bigger than that. So feel free to think outside the box, I guess, and if it's beneficial in any kind of way for you to use in your presentations, it's there. So if you want to use a lesson, you can do exactly what I did in preparing for this talk today. Go to the Gearing Up site, go to the lesson that you want, click the PowerPoint. It downloads a PowerPoint file, .ppt file. It's an actual file. You open that up, you can change this thing however you want to. You can add slides, you can delete slides, you can customize slides, you can do whatever you want. So it's a pretty flexible product for all the different presentations that you might use it for. So overall, again, I think it's a pretty big opportunity, pretty big option for resources for you. So feel free to browse and use anything in that you want to. So moving back into our focus here, I'm using lesson 5, which is tractor powered implements. I'm going to touch on those, but we're going to focus a little more of our time on the PTO implements and parts and pieces and safety issues with that. But again, each lesson has the outline. So if you want to do something very specific to your area that you're working with, you can add another point in here and add a few slides to make it specific, for specific types of agriculture, certain animals, certain crops, certain specialty crops. You can add in whatever you want in that. So again, just kind of going back over the youth aspect, there's a lot of things that go into there being an issue with youth being employed in agriculture. And that's not a picture of me on that John Deere tractor, but we had a tractor that was about that size that I drove until I got sick of driving it when I was a kid. So it's definitely something that's connected to me, but it's very common in the ag community that you have tractor operators, that you have, especially now with the show animal circuit that's seemed to be just really exploded. Um, and then any other farm chores that may be needed. There's a lot of connection, right? There's a lot of application there. So the legal requirements are listed. I'm not going to go through a lot of these, but in the Gearing Up curriculum, you'll have slides that say activity. So, this could be something, what are we looking at with number one on the graphic here? So the law says that youth cannot operate tractors over 20 horsepower unless they've had the certification, unless they've had the training. So that's kind of what this graphic is all about, with all of these different pieces here. So if you've got, again, just basic awareness, that covers a lot of things in West Tennessee and West Kentucky. And in our region just outside of that as well, there's a lot of things that apply there. So why do we do what we do? I think that's something that's probably common for you and for me and for everybody that's involved in agriculture. Um, why do we do what we do? It's for people, right? It's really difficult unless you're in a lawsuit. You can do it there, but it's really difficult to put a dollar figure on somebody's life, right? Or if you're looking at insurance claim, you can put dollar figures on that, but there's really no way to put a value to somebody's life. So what we talk about, we can talk about a lot of things, but in the safety world, it's a person, and that makes it pretty personal. That makes it a pretty deep and emotional thing in the farming community. And so it's about people. It's all about the people, right? So I remember when I was a kid, and this is, I think this was the situation and the location for this. This kid had was working on his family's farm and got entangled in a rotating PTO shaft. I think he was grinding feed. Um, I don't remember his cattle or hog feed or whatever, but he was grinding feed in his family's farm, and somehow got tangled in the PTO, and it pulled both of his arms off of his body, which is not the greatest situation to look at for a case study, but it stuck with me because he was about the same age I was when this story come out. And so it's impactful when we talk about a person. It's on more on the psychological side almost. It's something that's very deep. It's something that's very connected in with the work that we do. And so it stuck out to me, one, because he was about the same age as me, but it also stuck out to me. He knew what had happened. So he left the farmyard, walked to his house, the family's house, went in the house and leaned over the bathtub so that his bleeding would be contained in the bathtub. And the reason for that is he used a pencil to dial 911, but he went in the bathroom to lean over the tub because his mom had just got brand new white carpet in the house, and he didn't want to get mom's new carpet dirty. And so it just kind of stuck with me that it affected him in that way, and he was still able to actually think of that during the accident. Um, but we've got a survival here. We've got a success story. But it's a person, an actual person that we're talking about. So that's what it boils down to, is being able to impact people. So how do we do that? Well, we've got, again, the low literacy set up. We've got lots of different accidents, and this is just a very few accidents that we see in agriculture. But it's low literacy in application. So what that means is we've got some words here on the screen, but you don't really have to, we're looking at PTO safety specifically, you don't really have to know these two words up here. You don't have to know what a wrap point is to realize what's going to happen in that situation. It's meant to be low literacy and it's easy to understand what they're trying to show. So from the safety industry, you see a lot of that, specifically on warning labels on equipment. In the safety sections of operators manuals, you'll see a lot of that. So even if you don't read the language, if we look at this PTO shaft here, we got that symbol. If you don't read English, you can still see that, right? And if you look at it, you can probably understand it. If you don't read German, you have no idea anything about the German language, you're still going to find that symbol in Germany. You're going to find it in Russia. You're going to find it in South America. From the equipment manufacturer's perspective and their part of the industry, that is a universal symbol. So you'll see that anywhere in the world. Again, with the literacy, clear, concise, easy to understand, clearly communicating what the situation is or what the accident is what's the main focus. So we see that as a pretty big part of equipment safety. So this slide kind of shows, and in some ways, you still see some of this stuff in more rural areas. There's a lot of interest in show animals. There's a lot of interest in antique tractor, antique equipment as a hobby, using it as a hobby. The new student club I helped the students get started last semester. They're interested in old equipment. So this says the good old days were more hazardous, but I'm not sure that the hazards have gone away. For example, this is something probably pretty familiar with everybody. Have some rodent issues on the farm or in the house sometimes. So we have a mouse trap that we can use and be able to take care of those things. But there's hazards associated with this thing, right? So if it's set, you don't necessarily want to be putting your fingers in around the mechanism, right? Unless, what would make it appealing enough to stick your finger in this thing when it's set? Would a $10 bill be appealing enough? Would would you go in there with your fingers and grab $100 bill off of this if it was set? It's all about risk management, right? Making a decision to um, say it's worth the risk. I'm going to make a calculated decision of myself, on my own sound mind, even though we're not sound mind most of the time, of my own sound mind that I'm going to reach in there and do that. So with the hazard, with what we think the reward is, what if we had a mousetrap like this? And for size comparison here, there's the mouse trap and the rat trap on top of it. I didn't get set up for the camera to see this real good today, but I've used this thing just to see how dangerous it was. And you can take a carpenter's pencil. For those of you who've seen those from Lowe's, a carpenter, it's like a oblong shaped pencil or a number two pencil even, and trip this thing and it snaps the pencil in half. It just cuts right through. It's done. So again, the reward versus the risk scenario is still there, even though we have some good things going on with equipment and new safety, shielding and technology and all these things. The hazards in some ways haven't changed. They're still there, but technology and advancements have made it more safe in a lot of ways for workers to be around. So getting into some specific equipment, there's every piece of equipment that is attached to a tractor has its own unique hazards, and they're all going to be hazardous to your health. All of those are good, common things that we see in agricultural settings and farm production settings. So we've got different mounting systems, we've got different implements, we've got different mounting systems, and they all have their own unique hazards. So again, with the curriculum, just kind of a side note here, if you're interested in doing this, some of them have on the side there, you see activity on the sidebar. And so you can have a group participation kind of deal, which one of these shows a drawbar pull. So there we go. Frame mounted with the front end loader there. And you can go through the different activities. So with the safety procedures for each of those, it's important just to cover all the bases. Again, we're not going to cover all the different ones, but they are there for you as your resource to get through. Hitching on the back is there. There's a procedure. Paying attention it's always important, but just some simple procedure steps along the way makes a big difference as well. So the PTO system, again, is kind of our focus today. The PTO is basically the power that is needed for an implement is provided by the tractor through a PTO shaft, power takeoff shaft. So it's a direct line to the power from the tractor, which is great. But as a rotating shaft, a wrap point hazard is always going to be present with a PTO shaft. Even if it's shielded, 99%, and that's my figure, but 99% of PTO shafts look probably like this one in the top right corner there. This is the shield, and it does protect you, but at the ends, the actual rotating part of the shaft is still exposed. So it's not 100% contained, which presents the problems that we, are talking about today. So there's still a chance to get wrapped up in there. There are different size PTO shafts. If you're familiar with those, have used those. There are 3 different ones. There's a smaller one. It's a 540 RPM, the one on the left. The other 2 are 1000 RPM shafts. So basically that's how fast they spin, right? So it doesn't take very long for either one of those to wrap a person, to grab a person, and there be an issue. So in a sense, it doesn't matter which shaft it is. They're all dangerous, but those are 3 different forms that we can see it in. There are rated speeds. If you run a machine faster than it's designed, then you take a chance of things rotating too fast, and they will be coming apart pretty easily. I remember a friend of mine here in Callaway County was telling me he worked for a pretty large farmer at the time, and got a brand new bush hog, and I think maybe it's a bush hog brand. I don't remember specifics on that. But they got things switched up at the factory, and they put 540 gearboxes on this mower, and it had 1000 RPM PTO shaft to drive it. So he was out mowing it. I guess it was the first day they had it, and oversped those gearboxes. And he didn't know it because it was that way from the factory. But when things come apart, the PTO shaft launched forward and bounced off the back tire of the tractor, the whole shaft. I mean, it literally exploded. So having things turning at the right speed is always going to be an important thing from a machinery perspective, operational perspective with that. So we have marks on RPM gauges that show that one, like there, that the 540 rating. The parts and pieces of a PTO shaft are basically there. They're shielding on both ends. They're shielding in the middle. Most of them don't have the shielding over the connection point right at the very end of the shaft on either end. Master shield is the one that's found on the tractor. That sliding collar and universal joint there at the beginning is the more dangerous part of that. We do have a guard cone on each end, and it does protect, but it's not completely contained in that. So we've got some good things, good system that's going on, but the hazard hasn't changed, if that makes sense. We've got shielding, we've got some good things happening, but the hazard is still, the wrap point hazard is still there. So we have to be mindful of that. So we have some shielding that's available. Hopefully they're all still on tractors, the ones I grew up on. I didn't know they had a master shield until I was in college because they were hanging on the side of the barn I didn't know what they were for. Just I saw a green piece of metal, but I had no idea what it was for. Some designs are good. Some designs help. Some designs are making things more safe, and sometimes they're not so good a design. And so those shields get taken off and don't get reused, unfortunately. So we have to keep in mind the actual safety measure that it's meant to meet, and hopefully encourage those shields to get reinstalled on there. So the one exception to what I've said to you is the fully shielded driveline. So that one is completely shielded. You can't see any rotating parts. You can't see any rotating pieces, which is good because it's all completely contained. That's great. But not every machine has those. I'm not sure if there's certain regulations or certain resistance from companies or what the situation is. But if it's completely contained, that looks to me like it's a lot better than the ones that still have some space on each end to get wrapped up with. But that's what we've got. So um, this one that's I mentioned is the better design there is not real common in the U.S. It is there. Obviously, we have an example, but for some reason we don't see it very commonly in our country, or at least not yet. So hopefully that'll change soon. Anything that we do in agriculture, equipment related, the very first thing that you do is shut off the power. It's kind of like doing electrical work. If you're going to work on anything, turn the breaker off first. That's like step number one, no question. So shutting off the power, shutting off the engine, and then you can do your work. That's a pretty standard thing to do. The other parts of this presentation I'm not going to cover. We've got the hydraulic system and got the hitching system and other things here. So if y'all want to use this more for tailor fit to your needs, you can. It's all complete there. But that's going to save us a little bit of time on our part of the presentation here. The last thing I guess I'll end with a couple of things is there's a lot of examples of tractor powered implements here. You may or may not have these in your area, but they're pretty common across most of the agricultural world. We've got forage harvesters, round and square balers, manure spreaders, rotary cutter, the commonly called a bush hog, even though that's a brand name. We've got grinder mixers, all these different things, except for the front end loader. All these different tractor mounted, tractor powered implements are all driven with PTO shaft. So it's a very, very common situation, very common accident area that we're trying to work with here. And hopefully keep everybody better educated about it. One of the main things, and I'll end with this, and we'll take some questions that anyone might have. One of the most common things that is, we'll say maybe a bigger issue maybe than some other things, is the psychological part of working in these settings, because you have to trust your brain to do the job, right? To get you through the job. And in certain situations, your brain will lie to you. So you have to be mindful of that. And a good example I use in my safety class, how many people have done a text while they're driving? That's a calculated risk, right? In the moment, your brain says, I just got to hit a couple of keys and hit send, got it. Well, you're not paying attention when you're doing that, right? Not paying attention to your driving. So we have to be careful of the information that our brain actually tells us. We have to stop and think about it sometimes, and that's a big challenge. So with that, I guess I'll end here at this point. I could go on. I've been trained, I guess you could say, to talk for a living, so I can do that. But I think y'all have better things to do than listen to me for a whole day for sure. So I'll end with that. What questions can I try and answer for anybody?
Dr. Hoover, that was great. Thank you for the time for that. And I'll go first with the question. If somebody's got a comment or a question as well, we'll follow up with that also. Thank you for providing that curriculum to us. I didn't know that was even out there. So that can be a great help, I think, to us, to the
Yeah,
agents as
good,
well. But
good.
going back to, you said some of the youth that were trained or certified, um, is there someone that watches that certification? Do they get a certificate? I mean, how does that work to say they've been through that training?
Well, that's a unique situation, I guess, for you guys, because some of you are the people designated that can do this. By the federal law, when it was originally written, I don't remember the exact wording, but basically, high school ag teachers and extension educators are the ones that can oversee that training, can oversee those programs and file their certificates and kind of manage that. Um, how many people have done that over the years? I don't know. I'd say probably very few, to be honest with you. But that originally in the law, that's what was set up is high school ag teachers and extension educators. So if that's a program that any of you would like to pursue and get set up, here you go. You've got the curriculum that specifically that meets that. So and I can help connect or walk you through maybe some of the initial thoughts on that if anybody wants to do that.
Okay, so that's good. There's a system in place somewhere, some in some fashion for that to be done. Okay, thank you. That's good info too. Other comments or questions from anyone in the audience?
Dr. Hoover, we work with a lot of beginning farmers that are adults. Do you think they could do this as, self-guided, or would it be better to offer a class for them in this?
Well, I think it could be an option. It depends on how you want to set up a class or set up a training. That's partly what those videos that I showed you on the Gearing Up site, the Part A and Part P videos for each of those lessons, was originally set up to do a kind of like a self-study class for, high school, elementary, middle school kids that were trapped in COVID at home. They could log in and go through and see those videos and be able to go through it. So if you wanted to do a continuing ed or a young farmer training or whatever, whatever you'd want to consider, I think that would be a good option to think about. Personally, this is just me, all right? But personally, I'd rather go to class and see somebody than do it on a screen. That's just me personally how I'd want to do it. But if it works and it gets the message out and you make the connections within the community, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it. So there's electronic and in-person options that can be set up with that curriculum. So yeah, it's good. I think that's a good option.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Just to follow up with Eileen, that I think through some of the folks coming out of the military want to begin farming, and I think we've had some of those kind of inquiries of how they could get some of this type of information. So that might be helpful just to figure out a way to do that. But I could see that as an option for them maybe. Other questions that may be out there, any or just a comment from anyone.
I have a quick question. We're gearing up for another Farm Safety Day in just a few weeks from now down in Wright County. And a big part of it was PTO focus, which this is super convenient. I'm glad we had this talk. And one of the things that we want to do is a live demo with PTO. I've seen them on YouTube. I've seen a couple in person before. I was just wondering if you had any recommendations on um, how to go about that, if I might overlook anything. We'll go through the basic steps, have the PTO shut off everything while we tie up maybe a dummy. But if you had any advice on that.
Yes, that is a great question. I'm really glad that you asked that. The last thing, and this goes with any kind of presentation, but especially something like this, I think the last thing that you want to do is become a statistic in your own demonstration, right? And I tried to find the one I've seen on YouTube as well. I've searched for these for my class. I've seen one on YouTube, and I hope it wasn't one of you all. So forgive me if it's going that direction. But It was a demonstration, probably exactly like what you're talking about, setting up. And the guy had a straw-filled coveralls or whatever it was, dummy, and he stood behind the rear wheel of the tractor, and I can't remember if it's like a bush hog or PTO tiller or something like that. Guy in the seat on the tractor turns everything on, spins it up, and this guy's holding on to the dummy as he's pushing it into the PTO shaft. Okay. So while that's effective, what you may or may not realize is when something happens, like getting caught in a shaft, a rotating shaft, your body's natural reaction is to hang on. So if the rotating shaft grabs that dummy and pulls, like, like it will, a huge pull, your initial involuntary reaction of your body is to hang on. And that's what this guy was doing. He was feeding it in by hand. You can see it jerking his hand toward the shaft before he let it go. And I'm like, I don't know why you'd want to publish something like that. But I have done that kind of presentation before. What I have done is if you get some of those real cheap, um, you see them for chemical applications in greenhouses, those white coverall suits that you can get. Take those, stuff them with straw, and tie a string around, we'll say the foot or hand of the dummy. Tie a string from there to the shaft so that nobody's around it when it gets pulled in. That removes the person, the presenter, completely from the harm that can come from that. And also, you can talk about, and I didn't go through this, but there's a lab activity on the Gearing Up site that talks about how much of your shoestring wraps around a PTO shaft in, can't remember what exactly it is, like 2 or 3 seconds. So you can take this dummy and lay it on the ground 15, 20 feet away with a string that's 15, 20 feet long. And before you can do any, if you put yourself in that situation, before you can do anything about it, that dummy is around the shaft. So I think that gets the point across as well. If you've got some distance, you say, well, I'm 20 feet away. I can get myself free before something bad happens. But the time involved is just not, for our human ability, is not possible. So I think that's probably the safest way, if you want to do a live demonstration, the safest way to do that.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Pete. Yeah. Hey, Peter, thanks for your question. I'm going to just stop the recording.